If you are a fan of dark fables in which the protagonist descends deeper and deeper into twisted dungeons to slay grotesque looking monsters, then I have a game tip for you, namely the action-adventure Rune. In my country, the German government put this game onto the index shortly after its release in the year 2000. Curiously enough, only 2 years later, the PS2 version was published here, wholly uncut and with a 16+ rating. I can tell you, our game regulation system goes some mysterious ways. In Rune itself, you slip into the role of a Viking who has to save the world in a Nordic tinted fantasy realm. But one step at a time, let's roll the intro. In the beginning, we give our vote to protect the runestone in our village from any evil, because only those can put Ragnarök at bay. But the traitor Konrek, one of the main antagonists, is on its way to destroy the stones and has aligned himself towards the evil god Loki. You have a confrontation with him at open sea, but your whole crew gets annihilated because of dark magic, and you are the only survivor who finds himself inside an underwater cave. The story is nothing to speak of. There are not many cutscenes and the camera direction feels very amateurish. Even worse is the surround sound, which travels from one ear to the other during a monologue, but you will not find many NPCs anyway. Sometimes Allfather Odin shows up to give you some advice along the way, but the majority of your playthrough you are on your own, so get comfortable with yourself. The first 2/3 of the game is pretty much straightforward story-wise, and there isn't much to tell you. But afterwards, the game takes off when you finally invade Loki's headquarters and get your revenge on Konrek. Everything becomes much more twisted. After you achieved victory against Konrek, Loki transforms him into a monster and you are left behind. But wait, there's more. Our hero Ragnar has enough of this bullshit and decides to become a monster as well and starts chasing the motherfucker. I didn't really saw that coming, and the game even gets a bit depressive. Odin doesn't speak with us anymore and Loki's creatures are wiping out the neighborhood. Even friendly Vikings will now attack you, but I can't blame them because we don't look that nice anymore. Until the end, I thought to myself, this will not have a happy ending. Ragnarök is here. But then you finish the game and are left with a big disappointment, because back at our home village, we fight Konrek one last time and that's it. Odin decides to speak to us again and Loki gets destroyed in mysterious ways. But what is with his army? I thought he was winning. Odin even invites us to Valhalla and look at that, a fucking rainbow. This game was super dark straight from the beginning and now we are walking on a rainbow. I don't know what to say. In a nutshell, this is not the type of game you want to play for the story. The ending feels like the developers ran out of time and had to finish it right now. Nevertheless, I actually liked the dubbing. Especially Loki is most convincing. He only gets to speak very late, but I love his insanity.
Odin. One-eyed one! Have you come at last to set me free? Or have you come to gloat upon my twisted form?
Gameplay-wise, you will get a good mix of slashing, jumping and climbing. Even some light puzzles needs to be solved. When a fight emerges, you will primarily press the left mouse button and dance around your enemy. There are no ranged weapons. Instead, the game offers a wide variety of melee defenses, put into 3 different categories: swords, axes and hammers. Primarily I have used swords and hammers. The former has an excellent range to keep the enemy at a distance. Hammers are very useful to crush armored ones. You can even throw your weapon, something I rarely did in this game because your weapons have a habit to get lost. During my playthrough, I even encountered a bug where my sword would vanish from my eyes and I couldn't even pick up a new one. Luckily, this problem fixed itself after a while. Don't ask me how. Even blocking is possible with the right mouse button, but you need a shield for that, which can also break if someone is hammering too hard on it. This also applies to your enemies. Looking for new shields will be one of your primary objectives in this game. Later, you will even find two-hand weapons. These are very powerful, but logically you cannot equip a shield along with them. It's not like the game gets any easier. You will not only look for shields, but also for something to eat to refill your health bar. Your primary protein source comes from lizards, which are crawling on walls. Our hero Ragnar likes to bite off the head and throws away the rest. Or how about a jar of meat? After one slug, the whole pot gets thrown against the floor. I always have a big grin when that happens. To mix the fighting mechanics a bit up, you have the so-called rune system in place. That's also why this game got its name. Your rune power on the right side is like your mana. It does not regenerate over time, but instead you have to find runes of power to refill it. But I'm not a big fan of that system. The runestones themselves are most of the time well hidden and require your full attention to be found. This is per se not a bad thing and rewards the explorer in you, but there is a severe problem with it. When your mana bar is full, you can't pick up any new runes. This also means that the tactical procedure is almost impossible. After all, you don't really know the spawn locations of the enemies or the rune stones to estimate the right time for using your powers, at least not on your first playthrough. This will lead to situations where you waste your abilities on fights that could have been more useful in other places. But let's answer the question of what these rune powers really do. Depending on what kind of weapon you carry, you can cast different spells towards your enemy. Take note that not every spell is equally helpful, and the whole system has some serious balancing issues. For example, you will find a two-hand axe that can freeze your enemies for a brief moment. On the other hand, you will find a two-hand hammer that can transform your enemies into stone forever. Seriously, why should anyone want to use the axe? Other spells that I found pretty helpful will heat your weapon so you can scorch the enemies around you or create a shockwave that will cast your foes into the abyss. Some weapons also look very magnificent, like the sword here. Not only does it look cool, but it can also convert enemies to your side forever. You can even kill them afterwards and they won't fight back. Another mechanic you will find here is your rage bar. This can be fooled by punching enemies in the face. Once it's full, your character will be pissed off. This is quite useful because for a short time you are invincible and do more damage. You can also turn into this condition by picking up the appropriate rune. Now the problem with that is that most of the time you find one, all nearby enemies are already dead, so it will become useless. Again, a much better system would have been to pick up these runes and activate them at your own desire. Last but not least, there is the Rune of Health, which increase your energy permanently. These are rare and I have only found them 3 times in my whole playthrough, and 2 of them couldn't even be missed. I don't know how many of these can be found, but you can make your life a lot easier if you keep an eye up. The levels in this game can be sometimes quite labyrinthine, and making you running in circles to find the exit. The good thing is, Rune is a linear type of game where you embark on a journey to the center of the earth or something like that. When you complete a level, you will never return to it, so it always goes forward, which I appreciate. Besides the fights, there will also be a lot of jumping and climbing in this game. With that comes many pitch black chasms that will cost your life if you don't watch out. The good thing is that the controls work pretty well and I didn't have many problems. Additionally to the jumping, the developers also like to implement all different kinds of death traps into their game that can kill you instantly. Some of those almost got me a heart attack. From a technical standpoint, Rune shows itself on its chocolate side. Yes, the graphics are blocky and the textures also look blurry, but what do you expect from a 2000 game? But where it delivers is the atmosphere. There are some fantastic looking sceneries and I got many goosebumps, especially when you are descending deeper and deeper into the dungeon with a torch in your hand. Sometimes you get some excellent horror atmosphere out of it. Rune does not just take place underground, by the way. You also make your way back to the surface, raid an enemy Viking clan and even visit some diabolic dwarfs who use goblins as slave labor. Fucking great. The fact that you always travel alone means that nobody will constantly annoy you with his comments. Instead, you listen to the sounds of your surrounding and disturbing screams in the distance because there isn't much music to be found here. Occasionally, there will be some orchestric theme playing in the background when you have a big fight, but that's it. The enemy AI is also quite good. Wounded enemies will run away or interact with the environment to unleash some traps upon you. But what is probably the reason why this game got so popular is the level of violence here. You can brutally slaughter your enemies and leave nothing left than a pile of blood. Even chopped off body parts can be picked up and thrown around. Sick, but awesome. The fighting mechanics are also physics based. Depending on how you swing your weapons, the game determines which body part will be chopped off. Some enemies can only be killed by removing their heads. The same thing applies if you try to block. Even if your shield is up, this doesn't give you a guarantee to block an attack. Depending on which angle the attack is coming from, there can be still a chance that it will hit an exposed area of your character. The game even checks if the attack only hits your weapon, resulting in no damage. This is really impressive. You don't see things like that in today's games. And I can tell you, it never gets old to slice through hordes of goblins, which are most prone to lose a body part.
Hello there.
And that's the game. Rune is a dark and fantastic Viking adventure. It might be cliché-ridden, but nonetheless is very atmospheric, especially if you dare to play it at night. Just know that you shouldn't expect much of a story. This is almost gameplay only. If you are a fan of pointless killing and like jumping around, then you should definitely check it out. What is also a lot of fun is collecting new weapons and finding out what precisely the rune power does. And with that, I have said enough. I hope you liked it, and maybe until next time.
This indulgent structure is new. It seems the Dwarf Lord has built a temple to himself. And dwarves are indeed excellent smiths. But without their leader, they will scatter in fear, and their use to Loki will be at an end. Seek out the Dwarf Lord within, Ragnar. Destroy the creature vain enough to appoint himself a demigod, and the runes will tell of how you crippled his entire army.